All right, let's talk about amp simulators a little bit today. I'm getting a lot of questions that are somewhat similar and the same. I've answered these before, but I'm going to make a new video for you today. And I also wanted to mention that I updated my PDF that I give away for free. It's pretty much everything that you would need to know about how to get started using an amp simulator, as well as recording tips and basic mixing tips. That is free below in the description. So I've been getting a lot of questions again recently. What is required in order to use an amp simulator effectively? And essentially it's 4 pieces. You're going to need a computer of some kind, an audio interface, a DAW, and headphones. The headphones could be studio monitors, but most likely you're probably going to have better luck with headphones if you're just getting started and you don't have a huge budget. Now, there are a lot of interfaces on the market, but the most important thing that you need to look for is an interface that has a good high Z input. This is the input that you're going to use with your instrument cable and plug into the interface. Personally, I use Audient interfaces. I just did a video about this, the Audient ID4. This is the exact interface that I have recorded a number of YouTube videos and songs that you have heard when I use my laptop. Now, on my main mixing rig, I use the big brother, the ID44. But the reason why I use Audient interfaces here is if you can see the high Z input, this will take a guitar signal perfectly. I have recorded extremely high output pickups into this interface with no problems at all. The reason why this is so important is if you have an interface that doesn't have enough headroom, when you play your guitar, you're going to clip the signal into the DAW. So if you find that even when you plug in and your input knob is all the way down on the interface, but you play guitar and you're still clipping, this means you have an interface that does not have enough headroom to take a high Z signal. So when you're shopping or you're looking to buy, pay attention to this crucial piece of information, because it's really going to suck if you spend $100 on an interface, thought you had a good deal, you plug in, you go play guitar and everything's clipping. The interface is not junk, but it means that you're going to have to get a DI box or something specific to plug into that can turn your level down, and then you plug into the interface. So just take the time, buy a high quality, good interface. Like I said, the Audient stuff I use exclusively, both on my main mixing rig and this as well when I'm using my laptop. I love them. I've had a lot of great results with them. Now, in terms of a computer, even laptops these days, like I just mentioned, I use a laptop sometimes. Any laptop pretty much, within the last couple of years will most likely be okay. I highly recommend Creative Devices laptops because they are purposely built for audio production. And so they jam in a great CPU with a lot of RAM. Those are the 2 main things that you are looking for when you want to do audio. The GPU really doesn't matter because you're not going to be doing gaming. So when it comes to audio, you need a good CPU and a healthy amount of RAM. If you only have 16 gigabytes of RAM, that's probably going to be okay to run your drum VST and perhaps a bass VST and a number of plugins for small sessions. If you want to get more serious into this, the bare minimum would be 32 gigabytes of RAM, and if you have any desire to use orchestral libraries or something like this at the higher nature, you need 64 gigabytes of RAM at a bare minimum. Now we move on to headphones. You need a good pair of headphones for recording so you can hear what you're doing. So throw away your Beats by Dr. Dre, forget about your gaming headphones. Those are all hyped, be pleasant to listen to for listening to music as a consumer or playing a game. Certain frequencies are hyped, they are not meant for studio work. Now for a long time I actually used the Austrian Audio Hi-X 65s, but last year I invested in a very high quality pair of headphones called Audeze LCDXs. These headphones are going to be way overkill for 99% of you. They're very expensive, but they are very niche and they are purpose-built for studio work. That said, the Austrian Audio Hi-X 65s will be a great bridge. They're very mid-range in terms of pricing. They're open backs, you'll be able to do mixing on them, and you'll be able to record guitars with them. So that is the bare minimum of the required gear that you're going to need. Now, the second thing I would like to talk about is I've been getting a lot of questions about gain staging again. And I have to admit, I kind of added to the confusion last year because I made a video detailing, how we were using interfaces and amp simulators wrong, and then there was this Google Excel sheet where if you had a certain interface, you need to set yada yada yada. The point is I think I just confused you more than I helped you. When it comes down to it, you just don't want to clip your DI signal. If you record too hot, as it's called, you have too hot of a signal going into the DAW, and you record like that, your DI file is trashed. You're not going to have the results that you're expecting to have with your amp simulators, and overall things are just not going to sound very good. Now, conversely, if you're like, okay, Scott, I don't want to record too hot, I'm just going to go as low as possible and I'll be good to go. That's also incorrect. If you have a DI file that's too weak, you're going to run into the situation where you're not going to have a lot of sustain. Your palm mutes aren't going to have any body to them. Your overall guitar tone is going to sound weak. And you're also going to have a heck of a time trying to develop a tone that sounds full-bodied and powerful. So here is a foolproof way that you can gain stage your guitar tone into your DAW. Grab your guitar, plug into the interface, and play on the strings. Do some chug-chugs. Play decently hard. When you're looking into the DAW, you'll see the meter going up and down, right? What you want to do is when you're doing the hardest as possible chugs that you can do, you want to ensure that you're peaking, okay, the highest piece of audio information does not go higher than -6 dB. If that's the case for you, most likely your guitar signal is perfectly fine going into the DAW. It's going to be healthy, it's going to be good, and it's going to look a little bit something like this, as you can see on screen here. As you can see, it's a great medium between too hot and too low, and this is going to be a great signal to start working with. Now again, going to the first point, if you notice that even though on the interface your input is all the way down and you're recording into the DAW, but you're peaking and clipping everywhere, you got to get a DI box with a pad to push the signal down so that you can get a normal healthy signal into the DAW. Moving the fader down in the DAW is not what you want to do. You got to think about this in terms of workflow. You plug the guitar into the interface. From the interface, the signal goes into the DAW. So the signal that you have in the DAW is basically your final signal. So if you move the fader down in the DAW, you are not reducing the input of the guitar into the interface. You're just turning down the input that is already going into the DAW, and you're just turning that down. You're not actually reducing the input gain of the guitar going into the DAW. The third most important thing you need to know is about latency and buffer settings. Now, this is the whole point why you require an interface when you are recording guitar. Onboard audio with a computer is just not cut out for doing this kind of work. The audio interface has its own DSP and built-in drivers that's going to work with the computer so that you can do real-time audio recording at a high level. Now, what is a buffer setting and what is latency? Latency is basically the time you hit the guitar string, it travels into the interface, it goes into your DAW, goes through the list of plugins that you have there, goes through the master channel, comes out your speakers. It's called round trip. The amount of time it takes for you to go like this and for you to hear it is basically measured in latency. The less latency you have, the easier it's going to be to record guitar. Now with an audio interface, the way that you're going to do this is you will adjust the buffer setting. And for recording, if you can get down to about 128, you're pretty much good to go. Anything less than 128, obviously will be better. But if you can get to 128, that's pretty much the main threshold that you need to get to in order to record guitars with almost no latency. So for recording, 128 buffer size, really good to go. If you go any higher than that, you're going to introduce latency and it'll be basically impossible for you to record guitars because your brain is going to go crazy when you play the string and there's literally a second before you hear it on the speakers. It's going to be impossible. You're not going to be able to do it. I talk about this in the free PDF, but when you are recording, highly recommended to not use any plugins at all that you don't need. In particular, any type of mastering style plugin that'll induce loads of latency and it'll just tear your hair out trying to figure out why you can't record a guitar. Now, when you want to go and start mixing, then you would increase the buffer size to something like 1024 or higher. Next thing I'd like to mention is panning. I've been quite surprised. Almost every video I've done in the last 2 months, I have gotten a question about how I'm panning my guitars. This is a very good topic and I'd like to tell you exactly how this works. When you see me and I show you my sessions and I mention to you that I'm doing group processing, in Cubase it's called a group, you probably know it as a folder in Reaper or a bus in Pro Tools or something. What I'm doing is I'm taking my 2 guitar tracks that are panned left and right and I'm feeding them into a group track, which is where the amp simulator is inserted. And then in that group track, the amp simulator has stereo processing enabled. And what I do with the 2 individual tracks is one track is 100% left, the other track is 100% right. Those 2 tracks go into the group, and the amp simulator goes, cool, and it processes those 2 channels together in stereo. What's important to understand is that in order for stereo processing to function correctly, the amp simulator is expecting 2 tracks, but they must be 100% panned left and right. One has to be 100% left, one has to be 100% right. If you try to do any panning less than that and you feed it into a group track amp simulator for stereo processing, you're going to get washy, phasey sounding guitar tones because the amp simulator doesn't know what to do with that. You are putting two tracks together and they're sitting on top of each other, and the amp simulator will not process it correctly. So if you are doing any kind of panning other than 100% left-right, you're going to need to insert an amp simulator on that specific track. Now, why am I saying that? Because if you are doing quad tracking and you want to have one pair with 100% left-right, but then the second pair you want to have 80%, you're going to need to insert an amp simulator on both of those tracks that you want to pan at only 80% in order to get the panning correct, to get the correct sound that you're going for. You can do this yourself. Open up the DAW right now, record 2 tracks, feed it through a group track, and then reduce the panning and just listen to what happens to the guitar tone. This is the huge mistake that I made in the beginning, not understanding why this was happening, because I like to double track my melodies. And one day I realized why I do my melody guitar sound so washy and undefined. Come to find out, for lead tracks and solos and less than 100% pan guitars with amp simulators, you have to have the amp simulator on the track itself for the panning to work correctly. Now, the last thing that I would like to mention here is just a bit of advice for you based on my many years of recording. When you are recording guitar, do it in a bare bones situation. Recording guitar is about capturing a tight, good performance. It is not about tone crafting. It is not about thinking about which IRs you're going to use. It is not about blending different amps. And it sure as fuck is not about mixing while you record. You need to separate your mind. I am recording guitar. My job now is to focus on recording and getting a really good, tight, clean, clear performance. It is not tone crafting. It is not mixing. It is not thinking about guitar tones. However, all that being said, there is something to be said about having a cool guitar tone when you're tracking that inspires you and sounds good. For many years, I personally ignored this because I'm very good at just like, okay, all I'm doing is recording guitars. I can work on this later. I know a lot of you, it's very important to have a tone or something that you can chug that is inspirational and it sounds good for you. It's kind of like, you know, as a drummer, when you take all the time to clean all the cymbals and they're super nice and shite and briny and you're sitting there and you're like, damn, this looks awesome. You almost just play better because you feel like $1,000,000 because your cymbals look amazing. They're all, you know, glistening off the lights and everything, and they just look awesome. So you just play better. So I really get the idea and I understand the point of view there. And that is why recently I've spent a lot of time putting together high quality presets for very neural DSP plugins. You can find all of those in the description below on my website. They're ultra affordable, and they are meant specifically to help you write songs faster. They sound cool. They're even going to work in a mix. They're mix ready to go. You can do little tweaks if you want to do that. But basically what I'm trying to do is create presets in various different genres for various different neural DSP plugins that inspire you. You know, maybe you just came home, like today's Friday, I'm putting this video out on Friday. You just got home from work. It's 5:30, 6 o'clock. You're exhausted and you just want to chug. You don't want to sit there spending 30 minutes fucking going through IRs and trying to figure out what amps you just want to pull up an amazing sounding preset that'll probably generate some cool riffs and musical ideas and then record. Well, that's really why I'm putting these presets together. And I have to say, I am blown away by all the very positive feedback I've been getting, both in email and the reviews on the website. I am going to keep doing this. They take me a little while to do, so bear with me. But I fully understand why somebody is looking for a great preset in order to record with, because it completely makes sense. So all of those are at the link below in the description. Now, I don't want to make this a 30-minute video because it's honestly a little bit boring, but those are the main things I wanted to highlight in the video, as well to remind you again that everything that I just talked about in this video, if you want to have a piece of PDF that you can reference anytime you want, plus extra mixing tips and things to look for and more specific guidance based on my many years of experience and mistakes, there's a free PDF that you can grab down below in the description, as well as the links and everything to my website, etc., etc. So anyway, happy Friday, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.